Good evening. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Wyoming, I welcome our live and online audiences to this evening's candidate forum for the office of United States House of Representatives. I am Dee Buckstaff. I'm the president of the Wyoming League and an active member in the Teton County League. The League of Wyoming is pleased to host tonight's forum and 5 additional primary election forums with our partners, Wyoming Public Media and WyoFile. Additionally, we thank our local partners, the Casper League of Women Voters and the Natrona County Library, for their tremendous support of this forum and 2 others. The League of Women Voters of Wyoming is a nonpartisan grassroots organization that is part of the National League of Women Voters, which was founded in 1920. The League believes citizens play a critical role in our democracy through informed, active participation in our government. The League is dedicated to voter education, promoting voting rights, and providing information that helps voters make informed decisions at the polls. The League does not support or endorse any candidate running for office. The League distributes unbiased voter information through the online voter guide, vote411.org, and creates opportunities like tonight's forum for voters to hear directly from the candidates and make their own informed decisions. Tonight's forum is being live streamed by Wyoming Public Media and recorded by the Casper College audio and visual team, and will be available online afterwards at the Wyoming League, Wyoming Public Media, WyoFile, Vote411, and the Natrona County Library's websites. Thank you to our moderator, Matt Copeland, Chief Executive and Editor of WyoFile. Matt is an award-winning writer and editor who has run WyoFile since 2017, helping to grow the nonprofit into one of Wyoming's most trusted and widely read news sources. And thank you to our panelists, Maggie Mullen of WyoFile and Jordan Uplinger of Wyoming Public Media. Maggie reports on state government and politics, and before joining WyoFile in 2022, she spent 5 years at Wyoming Public Radio. Jordan reports on state government and politics for Wyoming Public Media's social media audience. His videos contextualize what our lawmakers are up to as they regulate key and emerging industries and technology. With that, please welcome our moderator for tonight's forum, Matt Copeland of WyoFile, who will introduce the guidelines and begin tonight's event.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Copeland, and it's my privilege to serve as the moderator this evening. The purpose of tonight's forum is to introduce you, the voters, to the candidates who hope to serve and earn the Republican nomination to serve as Wyoming's next congressional representative. Joining us tonight are 7 of the 8 Republican candidates: Jillian Balow, Bo Beitman, Kevin Christensen, Richard Dodson, Steve Freeze, David Girault, Chuck Gray, and Reed Rasner. Republican candidate Keith Goodenough was unable to join us due to a previous commitment, and Frank Chapman announced today that he's pulled out of the race. The Republican candidate with the most votes in this primary election will move on to the general election in the statewide race to hold Wyoming's lone seat. Tonight's questions have not been shared with the candidates in advance. Candidates are permitted to use notes, but not earbuds or other communication devices. If you haven't already, please turn off your cell phones. Each candidate will have up to 1 minute to make an introductory statement. Following their introductions, we'll ask questions. Each candidate will receive the same questions, and each will have 1 minute to provide their answer. We'll alternate who gets to answer first and proceed from stage left to stage right. For the benefit of our radio audience, I'll introduce each candidate before they begin each answer. Following the questions, each candidate will have 60 seconds to provide closing remarks. We ask that the candidates be respectful and courteous. This is a forum, not a debate, so please answer the questions for yourself. Please avoid personal attacks on other candidates and address your answers to the audience, not one another. Comments directed toward or about other candidates, including personal attacks, accusations, questions, or rebuttals, are not permitted. A candidate who's unable to follow this rule may be asked to leave the forum. Our timekeeper will advise you when 15 seconds remain and when time is up. I'll stop you if you go over time. Please do not hesitate to ask me to repeat a question. Audience, in addition to silencing your cell phones, we would ask that you not clap or vocalize either your support for or your displeasure with the information presented. Private recording of the forum is not permitted. First, we'll start with an introductory statement. Candidates, you'll each have up to 1 minute. And Ms. Balo, we'll begin with you.
Thank you, Matthew, for the outline. Thank you to the people of Wyoming for taking time to be informed voters, and thank you to WyoFile, Wyoming Public Media, and the League of Women Voters. I want to take just a moment to remember one of my good friends, Linda Barton, who was a member of the League of Women Voters and a wonderful friend of education, Wyoming, as well as my own. My name is Jillian Balo. I am a mother, a grandmother, a wife of 32 years, an Army mom, an FFA mom, and a candidate for U.S. Congress. I'm a fifth-generation Wyomingite. I grew up in Gillette. My roots are in Washakie County, and I went to the University of Wyoming. I taught school in Hewlett and raised 2 children in Thermopolis and Cheyenne. I'm your twice-elected State Superintendent of Public Instruction, and I'm very excited to talk with you about my experience to lead and the roots that I have to represent. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Beitman.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. I am Bo Beitman. I am the current State Senate President of the Wyoming Senate. I'm serving my last of my second term in the State Senate. Before that, I was elected to the State House of Representatives in 2016. I live up in northern Sheridan County with my wife, Mercedes. We've been married almost 20 years, and my 2 teenage daughters, Holly and Alyssa. I'm a hockey dad. I'm a landman by trade. That is my real job outside of the legislature, and I've been doing that for over 2 decades. I have real-world experience in the energy and mining industry, also real-world experience in the legislative process, with 10 years ultimately culminating in the Senate presidency and leading Wyoming through some very difficult times the last session. I hope to earn your vote. I'm excited about tonight, so you get to hear a little bit more about me and the other candidates, and hopefully you can make an informed decision as to who will be your next representative. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Christensen.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Christensen. I'm a third-generation Wyomingite, Casper native, and University of Wyoming engineering graduate. I received a commission in the Army as an Apache attack helicopter pilot, and at the University of Wyoming, I met the beautiful young lady in the third row who became my wife, and we embarked on a 27-year, 18 military moves across 3 continents, 2 combat tours, and we raised 2 children along the way while serving our country. Those 2 combat tours earned me an opportunity to serve as a colonel at the Pentagon, where I represented the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Undersecretary of Defense in matters to House and Senate Armed Services Committee. That's where my congressional experience comes from. But you see the rest of the world, and then you're dying to get back home. I was the first Wyomingite selected to be the district manager for the Bureau of Land Management. I manage public lands on the eastern half of the state of Wyoming. I'm a public lands advocate and traditional conservative Republican. Thank you very much.
Mr. Dodson.
Hi, my name is Richard Dodson. I am an actor and a singer with a degree in Spanish and history. Some of that history, of course, is Wyoming being the first state in the country, and actually I think the first government in the world to grant universal suffrage to all women. I'm a veteran. I'm a certified technical trainer. I've spent most of my career in IT, helping people solve their problems, and I've gotten very good at it. A few things that I am not. I had a little discussion with Cowboy State Daily. I am not a former Democrat. I am a lifelong Republican. I am not Casper Man. I think that's somebody else on this stage. I live in Sundance. But one thing I am, and my condolences to anybody else who might have been vying for this honor, I am the spicy one.
Mr. Freeze.
Thank you, everyone, and good evening. My name is Steve Freeze. I'm 100% pro-gun, I'm 100% pro-life, 100% for never, ever raising your taxes. I believe there are two genders, not 72. I believe that a country without borders will no longer be a country for long. I believe that oil, gas, uranium, and coal are God-given gifts meant for the betterment of mankind. I came of age during the Reagan era and listened to Rush Limbaugh on the phone. I had, from humble beginnings, I had the opportunity to build a very successful investment business with my father. We sold it and began funding many conservative grassroots movements, most notably meeting Charlie Kirk when he was just 18 years old and helping him launch Turning Point USA. I believe that President Trump needs businessmen with the insight to solve problems in D.C., someone who can't be bought by lobbyists. I will go to D.C. for you on your behalf, and I will fight for Wyoming values and to advance the interests and for the betterment of the people of Wyoming. Thank you.
Mr. Geralt.
Good evening, and thank you for hosting this. My name is David Geralt, and proudly I'm the son of two legal immigrants who came to this country and built a life and allowed me and my brothers to experience the American dream here in Casper, Wyoming. It's great to be home, the same place that I earned my Eagle Scout, and an opportunity to serve my country as a commissioned officer. For 12 years I served. I worked as an Army Ranger, deployed to combat, served as a company commander in the 82nd Airborne Division, and during my final assignment on the active duty, I was assigned to the chairman of the to the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee and worked with a few different members of Congress to draft and pass federal legislation. I finished my 4.5 years working in Congress with U.S. Senator Cynthia Lummis. Those experiences all culminated and taught me how to get difficult things done in stressful environments to serve people and make their lives better. I look forward to the questions, and I look forward to the opportunity of earning each and every vote come August 18th. Thank you.
Mr. Gray.
I'm Chuck Gray. It was about 10 years ago, a few blocks from here, that I decided to get involved in public service because I was tired of politicians who came on the radio during campaign time and say one thing and then did the opposite once they were elected. And since then, I've built a track record of getting things done for the people of Wyoming, getting the priorities of the people of Wyoming done. The ultrasound bill, the first pro-life bill in over 30 years to get done. Getting access to markets for our coal when we had two governors in a row, Gordon and Meade, who were refusing to defend our access to markets for our coal. And then election integrity, voter ID. Got that done in 2021. And the Stand Your Ground bill, a very important Second Amendment bill that we got done in 2019. And then now, as the Wyoming Secretary of State, proof of citizenship for registering to vote, banning foreign funding of elections, and banning ranked choice voting. That is a real track record, and I'm going to bring that track record of getting the conservative priorities of the people of Wyoming done now as your next member of the United States Congress. Thank you.
Mr. Reisner.
Well, I'm Reed Reisner, born and raised right here in Casper, Wyoming. I'm a fourth-generation Wyomingite. I went to St. Anthony's School, graduated Natrona County High School, and Casper College, right here where we're at tonight. I'm not a career politician. I'm a career businessman. I've signed both sides of the checks for decades now. I've employed hundreds of people in the state of Wyoming, and I've created the American dream for myself and our family, and I want to protect your American dream, and that's why I'm running for Congress. What we're seeing happening in Wyoming today, saying goodbye to business, is a sad reality, and I want to go to Washington and fight and make sure we have good paying jobs so that our kids and our grandkids have an opportunity to not only own a home in this state, but raise their family, continue our legacy and our heritage, and protect Wyoming. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Let's move on to the questions. As a reminder, you'll each have up to 60 seconds to answer, and we'll start with you, Mr. Beitman. Maggie?
If elected, what will be your #1 priority in service to Wyoming as a member of Congress, and how will you carry out that priority?
Wow, there's a lot to get done in a 60-second answer. Probably the #1 overarching priority is quality representation, of course. That is vital when you only have one representative serving you in Congress. That person needs to be all Wyoming all the time. That means representing everybody in the state of Wyoming. It means listening and working on their behalf and being Wyoming's hype man in Congress. I'm used to doing that. The last 2 years as Senate President, I've been in Washington, D.C. a lot working with the White House on energy dominance and other important matters like welfare fraud. I can continue the work out there, but affordability is probably the overarching thing. So getting the economy back on track, cutting inflation, energy dominance, getting prices down, focusing on issues that matter to Americans, not abroad. We need to focus on Americans and put Americans first. That's what we all voted for last election. We're not seeing it yet. I will be a voice for everybody in Wyoming and a voice for America. Thank you.
Mr. Christensen?
We live in a state where over half of our land is managed by the federal government. 2/3 of the mineral state that we make our living off of is managed by the federal government. Yet today we have unelected low-level bureaucrats who possess more power over those federal lands than our own governor does. That's out of balance, I think, for a state that relies on those federal lands, those public lands, for our economy, and we need to change that. Getting in Congress, I will restore that control back to the state of Wyoming so that we have more control. Coal, oil and gas, uranium, we have incredible wealth in our state of Wyoming, and we have to have more say over those lands. We can't have situations where the federal government has the Rock Springs Resource Management Plan, the public lands rule, and other closing in coal to Wyoming. We're going to bring that control back to Wyoming. Thank you.
Mr. Dodson?
So for the past 15 years, I've been helping homeless services solve problems in various different communities across the country. And one of the things that drives homelessness is housing affordability. And I know Wyomingites all across the state are dealing with how expensive housing is. And the reason I know that is because every community across the country is dealing with housing affordability problems. So what do we do about that? Well, that's not an easy problem because we do live in a free market society, and I want to be able to sell my house for as much as I can. And I did when I had the opportunity. I was fortunate enough to have a house in Austin that was close to an Apple campus. And so that house appreciated enough so that I was able to pay off that loan and purchase my current house outright. But that also increases affordability for all my neighbors whose property taxes are now based off of that sale. So I guess the thing that we need to do at the federal level is find ways to incentivize more affordable housing so that it's not as expensive as all that.
Mr. Freeze?
Thank you. My number one priority in Washington, D.C. will be to unleash Wyoming's energy potential by getting regulations changed. It takes too long to get permitted. There are redundant, repetitive processes. What we need is the ability to make use of our natural resources so that we can provide fantastic, high-paying jobs so that our families can afford, the young families starting out can afford to stay here so that grandparents can be together with grandchildren. I've worked through regulatory processes before. I gave President Trump the tool that allowed him to repeal 7 regulations for every one that he passed in his first term. I look forward to that opportunity and putting my skills and abilities to use for the state. Thank you.
Mr. Giroux?
My number one priority is simple. It's looking at $40 trillion of debt that is saddling this country and ruining the opportunities for the next generation that's up and coming. It's an opportunity right now to serve in Congress to work at reducing what's being spent. Every family across the entire state of Wyoming has to balance their home budget every single month. Congress needs to do the same. I'll fully support an amendment to balance the budget. I'll also reduce the federal bureaucracy, and where duplicative regulations exist, I think that we can save money. And also overseeing any program that appropriates any of our taxpayer funds should be overseen for fraud, waste, and abuse. The way that we accomplish that is by sitting on important committees of jurisdiction. And as the only person here who's actually worked directly in Congress, I'm very proud to have the support of sitting members of Congress who will allow me to have a seat on the Budget Committee, the House Natural Resources Committee, and those committees are of utmost importance to the state of Wyoming and ensuring that we can tackle the cost of living and improve the economy for Wyoming families and the American people.
Mr. Gray?
We need to address affordability challenges that go back to Biden, and we do that by growing around our core industries, all of which have been under attack by the left for decades. Oil and gas, we need permitting in the powder. We've got this judge who's been blocking permitting, and the Congress can clear that. Coal, we need access to markets for our coal, and stopping the blockade in Oregon, Washington, California, the refusal of those states to get us access to markets for our coal. With soda ash, we have to stop China and their illegal dumping of this synthetic soda ash product that is in violation of our trade agreements. We have to stop China. And then we have to stop woke wind, which is in direct competition with our core industries. We need to grow around those core industries: coal, oil and gas, soda ash, our ranching and farming by bringing back country of origin labeling. And then we need to stop these data centers, stop this wind that is in competition and inconsistent with the values of our state. And that's how we also address the affordability crisis.
Mr. Reisner.
Yeah, so I think we need deregulation out of Washington, D.C., and to get rid of the bureaucrats. As our regulations grow, our freedoms die, and we all know that. Wyoming is the #1 producer of coal and uranium in this country. We're the 8th largest producer of oil and gas in this country, and we need to expand our efforts in those areas to be a global supplier of those. Opening up the ports in California was an amazing thing that Representative Hageman worked so hard on, and I look forward to carrying on the work that she did in Congress to make sure those ports stay open for Wyoming and accessible. I look forward to making sure that bureaucrats in Wyoming and in DC don't continue to stifle Wyoming's growth. And part of my plan in doing that was returning the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, right here to Wyoming and building it in Cheyenne. It'll create 500 new jobs right here in Wyoming, thousands of construction jobs, and it'll oversee over 13,000 jobs nationally. And I'm proud to have created that policy position, and I look forward to explaining it more in a second.
Thank you. Mr. Christensen, we'll begin with you on this next one. Jordan? Oh, I'm sorry. Mrs. Balo.
Thank you. As your Congresswoman, I'll have one thing on my mind, and that's Wyoming's next generation. We need to ensure that we have great communities, great schools, great jobs, and many opportunities for prosperity across Wyoming. As your state superintendent and throughout this campaign, I've worked with communities across the state, that includes leaders and community members, to identify what's most important. I'll focus first and foremost on making sure that the energy abundance that we are about to experience with the right leadership in Wyoming is felt throughout Wyoming in every community, every town, not just those that develop and produce energy. The second thing that I'll work on is curbing inflation to give Wyomingites more buying power now and in the future. That means focusing on healthcare tools to bring down the cost of healthcare, focusing on legislation that will make housing more affordable, and making sure that we address fraud, abuse, and waste.
Again, my apologies.
That's okay.
Now we will begin with the next question with Mr. Christensen. Jordan?
This is shaping up to be the most expensive U.S. House race in Wyoming's history, largely funded by several of your own personal or family wealth. What does that trend forecast for access to office in Wyoming and also candidates' accountability to voters?
You're going to say name.
Mr. Christensen.
Thank you for that question. I do not take monies from political action committees. I am very modest in self-funding my campaign. What I do is I get resources from the people of Wyoming. That's how our elections should be done. When we have outside forces that are buying our elections in Wyoming, and we're creating a situation where millionaires and billionaires can buy their way into office, that circumvents our democracy in Wyoming. And we, as voters, need to be aware of where that money's coming from and why people are spending that kind of money for a $174K job in DC. If you're doing it for power and for wealth, you're not doing it for the right reasons. It's about public service. I believe in term limits, and I believe that when we go to Congress, we need to know who we work for. When we take money from outside, we know who we work for. It's them. I will only work for the people of Wyoming, for the people of Wyoming.
Mr. Dodson.
It's been a real trend in this country to get more and more expensive elections. And it doesn't bode well for government of the people, by the people, and for the people when people who have more money than sense are funding candidates who may or may not actually care about the people of Wyoming. I am also not taking any PAC money. I can't say that I've made a conscious decision about that because nobody has offered me any PAC money. I'm holding up index card from Dollar General, which I have handwritten my contact information. I call it my fiscally responsible business card. Please see me afterwards if you would like a copy. We've got to find a way to make sure that the regular people of Wyoming have their voice. And I don't know if that means limiting contributions or what exactly is going to make that happen, but I am doing my part. I want everybody to know that.
Thank you. Mr. Freeze.
Thank you. We all made our filings recently for our campaign finances. And MSN, I think, misquoted. I have loaned considerable sums to the campaign, committed a lot of dollars there, but I've also raised over $400,000 from individual contributors across the state and the country. I've raised that money because I care deeply about the opportunity to serve the state. I would ban stock trading in DC. I'm not going there to get more money. I'm going there because it's an opportunity to serve, as our families had a tradition of doing so. So I think it's a nature of reality that folks in a position where they can expend the considerable sums to help people understand their message and who they are. This is going to be a trend that continues. And I think that, I'm here to serve you, and I'm putting the investment in there so that I can have that opportunity. Thank you.
Mr. Giroux?
I think one of the things that's most important is what we can observe right here from the stage and into the audience is the participation and the involvement and the attention that is being put on this race is demonstrating that voters across the state of Wyoming can't be bought. What's very obvious is that voters want to be met where they are, they want to be listened to, and they want to know that their concerns are going to be addressed in Washington, D.C. by someone who can actually accomplish them and not simply pay for their attention. I think that's demonstrated. The only thing that's been consistent in the polls, and maybe I'm in between a lot of guys who've done quite a bit of polling here, but I think one thing that has been consistent is the number of undecided voters. That indicates something very important to the state of Wyoming, which is, again, money is not the be-all, end-all of this process. It's about going and meeting people door to door. It's about hosting events and talking about what priorities are most important to families in the state of Wyoming and learning about what's important across the country and how to actually achieve meaningful results for people and their families to improve them. And we should be able to look to Congress confidently for those solutions.
Mr. Gray?
Well, I have a track record of advancing the will of the people of Wyoming and growing the conservative movement. When I first got to the legislature, there were 6 conservatives in the legislature. Now there's 34 in the State House. And in the process, when you get things done for the people, the media and the insiders, they attack you. I don't back down to the media and the insiders. And like President Trump, when I decided to run for this office, I did decide to put funds with loans into this race to take on the insiders and the media because they constantly attack me. WyoFile has millions of dollars of false attacks that they've put in their on their website over the years that have been syndicated by newspapers. My opponent to my left has put hundreds of thousands of dollars in false attacks. But like
Mr.
President
Gray,
Trump,
please don't address
I'm
your fellow
focused on
candidates.
defending the people of Wyoming. And that's what I'm going to continue to do. And that's why I'm not spending as much as Mr. Freese over here with the Jackson element.
Mr. Gray, please
but
do not
I am-
address your fellow candidates.
I am going to spend to take on the radical
Time's
media
up. Thank you,
and
Mr.
the
Gray.
insiders.
Mr. Reisner?
So I'm proud to announce that today, and this is a great question. I had a phone call. We've raised 17,000 donors have given us an average of $25 since I launched this campaign. These are actual Wyoming voters and across the country, and I'm proud to announce that. That was our phone call today, so this is great. I've made over 60,000 phone calls right here in Wyoming. Some of you I've talked to on the phone, and I'm proud to meet you where you're at, traveling the state over 50,000 miles, over 240 stops around Wyoming. We're out there putting in the work, and I look forward to representing all of you when I get to Washington, D.C. I'm accessible, I'm open, and I've always run my businesses that way. I always put the client first, and that's truly what gave me the success that I have today, is making sure the client was always put first and always had access to me. And that is what I will bring to Washington, D.C. I'm not a politician, I'm a businessman, and I run things like a business, not like a politician. I'll answer your phone calls, you can come out to D.C., and I'll be in Wyoming working for you.
Ms. Balo?
Wyoming can't be bought, and Wyoming won't be tricked. I grew up in an era where I got to see wonderful leaders like Craig Thomas and Al Simpson lead our state. Mike Enzi was my mayor, and then he was my legislator, and then he was my senator, my U.S. senator. Throughout his tenure as a Wyoming leader and a town leader, he was humble, he was hardworking, and he put as much money as he could raise into his campaign. I'll follow suit. I work for Wyoming. I'm accountable to Wyoming. I've spent this campaign going from community to community, talking to leaders, community members, door to door, doing service projects, and earning votes, one vote at a time. That will make me a better congresswoman because I'm connected to you, I understand your needs, and I'll work on behalf of the people of Wyoming and be accountable to you once elected.
Mr. Beitman.
It's a great question, and I think Wyoming is concerned about this very question, and I'm glad you asked, because everywhere we go on the campaign trail, it comes up. We are seeing an enormous amount of money being thrown at a U.S. House race in a state like Wyoming, and it's unnerving to a lot of folks who have lived here forever. And you bring up the good Senator Enzi. That's kind of who I looked up to when I was looking at politics. And boy, it sure would be a shame if this was the election where everything changed, where candidate quality used to be the thing. Retail politics used to be the thing. Hopefully, the voters ultimately have the final say. The voters will be able to go to the election booth and make their choice based on who they think is best to represent them, not based on who spent the most money on mailers and ads and billboards and all the things to get name ID. At the end of the day, candidate quality should matter, and the person you're voting for should be somebody that can do the job.
Mr. Dodson, you'll be up next for this next question. Maggie?
What groups, caucuses, voting blocs, or individual representatives currently in Congress do you admire and think are doing a good job? And are there any such groups you plan on aligning with if elected?
That's a difficult question because so little has come out of Washington for so long. I'm trying to see if I can think of somebody that I think is doing a good job, and it's very difficult for me to do that. Even our own representative has, goodness gracious, that's a very difficult question, and congratulations to you for that. I reached out to Representative Hageman a while back about homelessness, and the response that I got back was very clearly a canned response and kind of only tangentially related to my question, and so I wasn't very much impressed. John Barrasso did a much better job. I think he has actual real people, so I guess I'll answer John Barrasso.
Mr. Freeze?
No, I greatly admire what all of our electeds have done in office. Harriet Hageman is turned to by many in Congress for her opinion on the regulatory process. And John Barrasso recently tried to insert a key provision on primacy, which would give the state much more control over federal lands. But as I was debating whether I would throw my hat into this race, I was scrolling across the reel from one youngster, Brandon Gill, the youngest member of Congress. And I encourage you all to look up and watch this fellow skewer the head of the ABA over their ridiculous DEI policies, or take to town the head of the Smithsonian Institution for their absurd displays about white privilege and what a mockery that's been of our culture, of our country. I would not join the Freedom Caucus. I believe I can better serve the interests of Wyoming by standing beside them, though I would often vote alongside the Freedom Caucus in Washington.
Mr. Geralt?
In terms of joining any caucuses, what's important to me is representing the priorities of the state of Wyoming. If there's a caucus that can fulfill that and can work with me in order to achieve those priorities, I'm more than happy to join or consider joining that caucus. This state has been spoiled by our federal delegation. We've seen incredible performance not only from our current representative, Mrs. Hageman. Senator Lummis, who is my former boss, has led exceptionally well, not only this state, but on the federal level. And Senator John Barrasso, leading currently as the Senate Majority Whip, has afforded us the privilege and the opportunity to be overrepresented in the state of Wyoming. What's also important is to identify members who are currently serving and who I look forward to having the opportunity to serve with, who many of us may not have heard of, but are important nonetheless. Here, the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, Mike Rogers out of Alabama, Pete Stauber, who will be eventually the committee chairman for the House Natural Resources, and Jack Bergman, the eventual committee chairman for the Veterans Affairs Committee. All important committees that I'll seek to serve on to represent the state of Wyoming.
Mr. Gray.
Well, I think Congresswoman Hageman is doing a great job, but at the end of the day, I'm going to be focused on representing the people of Wyoming. That's who I align with. That's why I'm going to continue Congresswoman Hageman's practice of having at least one town hall in every single county in the state of Wyoming. My number, which I've given out since I was in the state legislature, now as lieutenant governor, it's not going to change. 307-251-1372. 307-251-1372. And I want to represent the people of Wyoming, your priorities, not the priorities of caucuses, not the insider media, the left-wing media and their narratives, but the people in getting the affordability challenges under control, in growing our industries, our coal, our oil and gas, our soda ash, our ranching and farming industries, stopping the insider stock trading, and passing the Save America Act. We need a representative that is pushing the priorities of the people of Wyoming.
Mr. Reisner.
Yeah, I won't be joining any caucuses. We've seen what the Wyoming Freedom Caucus has done right here in the state and their leader. It's been very destructive, especially to the business community. Members of Congress that I admire are obviously Representative Hageman, but I also admire Jim Jordan and Brian Jack on the House side. In the Senate side, I think we all love Senator Kennedy and his humor. He's a Jim, and we love him. We won't be joining any caucuses. We're going to work for the people of Wyoming, and I look forward to bringing leadership to Wyoming finally in the United States House of Representatives, similar to what Barbara Cuban did in the past, what Senator Craig Thomas did, a personal friend of mine from a long time ago. And there's some really great leaders that we've had in Wyoming, in Washington, D.C., that represented Wyoming at a national level, and we need that again.
Mrs. Balo?
I'm fortunate to have lived a lifetime in Wyoming with really amazing leaders as our federal delegates in both the House and the Senate. We've elected leaders who have integrity, who have class, and who work for the people of Wyoming. When we didn't, we voted them out. Wyoming's really good at that. We've been sending a woman to this office since 1994, and it's an honor to be considered as the next fierce woman to carry the torch for Wyoming. I won't be joining any caucuses, and again, I look to Senator Mike Enzi, who, as state superintendent, I worked with almost on a daily basis as he was redoing the Perkins Career and Technical Education Act. He would call me and he would say, "Does this work for Wyoming?" And that's what I want to do, not just on education bills, but every bill, which is one reason why a grassroots campaign that I'm running is so important, because I'm connecting with those people now and ready before day one to include those folks in decisions.
Mr. Bartman.
Thank you. Good question. I certainly would not join any caucuses in Washington. As Senate President, I've had to lead a pretty diverse group of 31 senators, all alphas, all type A's. Everybody wants to get everything done and save the world. And faction is probably the biggest impediment to getting anything done, especially in Washington, D.C. Our founding fathers warned us about the failure of faction, and look at us now. Our country is so divided. Congress is divided into probably 100 different caucuses. Everybody's got a caucus for something, and nothing gets done. To get things done, you need a workhorse, not a show horse, somebody that wants to go to Washington, D.C. with the rugged individualism that we represent out here, that person is their own man or their own woman, and they're going to represent us well. And you get people in the room, and you get to consensus, and you work things out. That's what your representative should do, and that's what I will do in Washington.
Mr. Christensen.
I admire Thomas Massey of Kentucky. This is a man who stood up for what he believed in. He didn't always go along with the political party. He was willing to work with members of the other party. He was willing to stand up when he was being pressured to do something that his own state did not want him to do. That's courage in action. $32 million of foreign money, though, have taken him out, and he will not be reelected. But I will reach out to him because he is a person of character and values. More so than the party, we in Wyoming have always selected the person over the party. Select a person with character and values. That's what you're going to get in Congress, is a person who will follow the character and values of the state of Wyoming. I'm a person who believes that that is the fundamental basis of what we should do in Wyoming represent. I will not join any caucuses. I'm not Freedom Caucus, and I'm not MAGA.
Thank you. Mr. Freeze, you're in the on-deck circle. Jordan?
Thousands of Wyomingites have lost access to health care in recent months due to changes Congress made to Medicaid eligibility and the end of enhanced insurance subsidies. Meanwhile, hospitals and healthcare providers are saying their financial models are increasingly unstable. What kind of policies or funding would you support to address the affordability and access problem in Wyoming?
Mr. Freeze.
Thank you. Let's remember where this started. Obamacare was, I believe, intentionally designed to lead to just these kinds of problems so that there would be no other choice amongst many thinking other than to look to single payer and have the government control everything. We do not want that. We do not want something like Canada's healthcare system where people are waiting months and months just to get an MRI scan, and they're told, no, you're not likely to get a kidney transplant, but we can provide you a government-paid assisted suicide. We don't need this. We don't want it. It is an enormous, difficult task. I've been meeting with representatives of the Wyoming Hospitals Association. I've been visiting EMS centers. It is a big puzzle. I've learned that it is taking now for people to qualify for Medicaid in nursing homes. It's now taking up to a year to get qualified. There are enormous reforms that need to be made. And we need special attention cared. We need someone fighting, looking out for exactly what's going to work for Wyoming, because it's going to take minute little details and changes to be sure that we get our rural.
Thank you, Mr. Freeze.
Oh, thank you.
Mr. Geralt.
I've traveled through all 23 counties of the state of Wyoming at least 3 or 4 times at this point, and one of the most consistent and persistent issues that I hear about is addressing rural health care in this state. The Working Families Tax Cut authorized the Rural Health Care Transformation Program, which appropriated $205 million for the state of Wyoming, second largest per capita out of any state in the country. It's an important framework, but it doesn't completely solve the issues. It has important provisions on workforce development, keeping and attracting new providers, and ensuring that there's transparency for medication, both for those on fixed incomes and those who aren't, but who need to see that transparency for affordability reasons. Other elements that we need to address is health insurance should be able to be purchased and sold via interstate, and this is one of the negative consequences of the Affordable Care Act. And additionally, we need to introduce transparency when looking at PBMs and ensure that Americans know that their dollars are going further for the medical care that they're being provided.
Mr. Gray?
Obamacare must be repealed and replaced. It was designed to fail, and it is failing. When you have a so-called marketplace in our state that has one provider, by definition, that is going to fail because there is zero competition. So it must be repealed and replaced on the health insurance side. We have to have insurance across state lines so that once again, we are able to have controls on pricing. And then on the provider side, you've got to have healthcare price transparency. And I was talking about this issue long before it went into vogue in 2018 with the healthcare price transparency bill that we continue to work on despite a lot of the insider forces that have been trying to stop it from going through. So healthcare price transparency is also pivotal. And then what was in the One Big Beautiful Bill, the Healthcare Rural Transformation Fund, is very important. We have to make sure that those funds are working, and I'm very concerned about the rollout on the state side because the states were in charge of those funding, and I want to get it right as your next member of Congress.
Mr. Reisner.
The one big beautiful bill President Trump gave us the Rural Health Fund, over $200 million back to Wyoming. It allows states like Wyoming or Maine or Alaska and small rural areas to control that money so they can use the money where they need it. But we need to go further than that. We need to cap malpractice insurance for practitioners, for OBGYNs, for internists, for pediatricians, so that they can hang a shingle outside of their office again and afford those insurance premiums. They don't have to join a large conglomerate that we're seeing taken over right here in Natrona County and across the state, where every corner in Instacare is branded as a Banner or United. It is no longer independent practices, so we need to allow doctors to come back into the state to practice medicine and repeal Obamacare.
Mrs. Balo?
The most important relationship in healthcare is between a patient and a doctor. While I'm working to replace Obamacare because Obamacare does not recognize that or does not adhere to that relationship, I'll make sure that patients have tools in their toolbox like health savings account, flexible coverage, etc. I'll also work to simplify Medicare and Medicaid so that it's easier for patients to navigate and more patient-friendly, and also work on identifying and curbing fraud, waste, and abuse in both of those programs. Most important for Wyoming is focusing on rural health care in 3 different areas. Number 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act has been really great in bringing money to Wyoming. We need to expand that and make sure it works for Wyoming. Number 2, making sure that veterans have access to great health care no matter where they live. And number 3, expanding and being a national and world leader in telehealth.
Mr. Beitman.
Can you repeat the question so I know I'm answering it directly, please?
Jordan?
Sorry, so many papers. The question was, what kind of policies or funding would you support to address the affordability and access problem in Wyoming?
So the policies I would support to bring affordability back to healthcare is reintroduce the free market to healthcare. The problem with healthcare is not because we need more government in our healthcare system at the moment. We need less. We need less bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. telling us what to do here in Wyoming. Wyoming's a very rural state. You cannot compare Wyoming to places like New York, but yet we do, or we try to do, with healthcare policy. It does not work. It has not worked, and to the point where Wyoming almost sent that $200 million back. The governor and the speaker and I had many talks about this because it just did not give us the flexibility we needed. Yes, we could bail out failing hospitals for a couple years, but with no real opportunity for them to get back in the black. It was just like throwing money, good money after bad. We need real reform. We need doctors to be able to be doctors again with less regulations, and hospitals to have competition with. I'm running out of time. That was a tough question for 60 seconds, but meet me afterwards. I'll continue.
Mr. Christensen.
How can we live in a country as wealthy as we are, who spends more percentage of our GDP on healthcare, yet is one of the few countries that covers not everyone? There's a fundamental problem with that. When you think about what happened when the Affordable Care Act came out, we put the insurance company and the pharmaceutical company between the patient and the provider. When you're in the doctor's office, there's 2 other entities in there with you, and that's the insurance company and the pharmacy company. Those profit margins are in the high 30s, the highest of any. Have you ever heard of an health insurance company or pharmacy company going out of business? Neither have I. This is where they're getting too much of our money, and they're taking it and becoming very wealthy as a result of that. We have to get the patient provider back being the primary, where the insurance and the pharmacy are service providers to the patient and the provider. And in Medicaid, we left money on the table. We are one of the states that hasn't expanded Medicaid, and I support expansion of Medicaid.
Mr. Dodson.
So before we start talking about repealing Obamacare, we should think about what life was like before then. I had an insurance provider make up a pre-existing condition out of whole cloth so that they could deny me coverage. I've been denied coverage, or at least threatened with denied coverage for pre-existing conditions multiple times. Insurance is the only industry I can think of where they make more money by doing less of the thing that they were instituted to do. And so I disagree with the idea that healthcare is even possible to be a free market, because when I had my heart attack, I did not go shopping to look for the best rates. I went to the nearest hospital and got taken care of. So, how do we do this? Well, first thing we do is we undo the changes that have come about in the last couple of years so that we can get back to where we were before things went crazy. Then, let's think about co-ops. I had co-op insurance for a couple of years, and it actually worked pretty well.
Thank you, candidates. Time for a brief change of pace. We're going to have a brief 5-question lightning round. With each of these questions, please please limit your answers to 10 seconds or fewer, ideally 1, 2, or 3-word answers. Some are yes, no, some are multiple choice, some have a little bit more elbow room. Maggie's going to take us through all of them. We're going to begin with you, Mr. Giroux.
Do you consider yourself a bridge builder or a renegade?
Mr. Giroux?
Yes, I do. That's what I spent my entire career in the United States Army doing, was building bridges, and my entire experience working in Congress was the exact same thing. And I hope to bring that same experience to the U.S. Congress now.
Mr. Gray?
Bridge builder, but also focused on truth, and a renegade when people are being dishonest.
Mr. Reisner?
A bridge builder, it's the art of the deal, and that's what I do every day in business, and I'm proud to bring it to Washington, D.C.
Mrs. Balo?
Bridge builder, always working with community members, state and national leaders to accomplish goals together.
Mr. Beitman?
Bridge builder, obviously. Look at my record as Senate President and what I was able to do there.
Mr. Christensen?
Bridge builder, coalition builder, and person who builds trust relationships. If you can't do that, you can't go to Congress.
Mr. Dodson?
I'm a bridge builder because good ideas are good ideas no matter which side of the aisle they come from.
Mr. Freeze?
I'm a bridge builder. I recruited several hundred attorneys to build an executive ordered package for President Trump that he used in his first term, and it was all volunteer. Try getting attorneys to work for free.
We'll begin this next one with you, Mr. Gray.
Yes.
Which do you prefer? Problem solving through consensus building or through selling a formed idea?
Mr. Gray?
Well, absolutely building consensus. I mean, that's how we got voter ID done in 2021.
Mr. Reisner?
You have to build consensus.
Mrs. Balo?
Build consensus, but go in with a vision and a goal in mind and negotiate.
Mr. Beitman?
Yeah, it's kind of a hybrid of the two. To be effective, you have to bring ideas, and it's good to be a visionary, but at the end of the day, you have to build consensus or it's not going anywhere.
Mr. Christensen?
Build consensus with those who think like you and those who do not.
Mr. Dodson?
So before I answer, I need to hear the second half of that.
Either through problem solving through consensus building or through selling a formed idea.
Oh, I think those two are both the same thing. Building a consensus is selling a formed idea.
Mr. Freeze?
I would just see it slightly differently. I would say that but there are two different approaches that would be used in different situations. Both of those are appropriate ways to get the important thing is to get the job done.
And Mr. Giroux?
Consensus building while having a strong conviction about what is in the best interest of the state of Wyoming.
And you're up next, Mr. Reisner.
Which types of input do you weigh more heavily when considering legislation? Constituents, stakeholder groups, experts in evidence, or political party leadership?
Mr. Reisner?
Always our constituents and what's best for Wyoming, and making sure that the people's voice is heard in the people's house.
Mrs. Balo?
Can you repeat the question? I didn't hear the whole list.
Of course. Which types of input do you weigh more heavily when considering legislation? Constituents, stakeholder groups, experts in evidence, or political party leadership?
All of the above except political party leadership. Constituents are first and should always be on your mind when going into situations.
Mr. Beitman?
Most heavily would be the constituents, but also you have to have a sound constitutional background and respect the rule of law.
Mr. Christensen?
Constituents, all the above minus political party. I'm Wyoming's man, not a DC puppet.
Mr. Dodson?
You're not going to get ideas that work if you discount the experts, but you've also got to represent the people of Wyoming.
Mr. Freeze.
Constituents first, and party leaders at the bottom of the pile.
Mr. Giroux.
Constituents first, and I believe the others have their role.
And Mr. Gray.
The people of Wyoming who are our constituents. And I have a track record of a decade of working to stop the special interests, the insider media, and that's why those groups don't like me, because we defend the people of Wyoming, our constituents.
And we'll begin with you, Ms. Balo, on this next one.
What 3 words would you use to describe your work and leadership style?
Mrs. Balo.
Integrity, collaboration, and thoroughness.
Mr. Beitman.
Can you repeat that? That was a good one.
Sure. What 3 words would you use to describe your work and leadership style?
My leadership style would be delegating and entrusting people to do the job. My work ethic and integrity matters, so definitely calm, competent, and effective.
Mr. Christensen.
Character, values, and trust. That's what leadership is. I proved that in combat. I've proved that in government. Those are the 3 things that people expect from their leaders.
Mr. Dotson.
My work style is built around data, and my leadership style is built around respect and collaboration.
Mr. Freeze.
My work style is built around methodical diligence interspersed with impulsive bursts of activity. And my leadership style is one of including people in a vision and casting a vision that draws people in and builds enthusiasm.
Mr. Giroux.
The 3 best words are character, competence, and commitment.
Mr. Gray.
Determined, focused on the truth, dogged.
And Mr. Reisner.
Hustle, loyalty, respect.
Thank you. And now we'll begin with Mr. Beitman. Maggie.
And a final yes or no. Do you have faith in the integrity and security of Wyoming's elections?
Yes.
Mr. Christensen.
Absolutely, unequivocally.
Mr. Dotson.
Yes.
Mr. Freeze. Mr. Giroux.
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Gray.
We always have more work to do, but because of the work we've done over the last 3.5 years, it's always about improvement.
Mr. Reisner.
Absolutely.
And Mrs. Balo.
Yes, thank you, county clerks.
Now back to our regularly scheduled programming. Thank you. These next 2 questions address federal public lands, and once again, you'll have 60 seconds to answer each. We'll begin with you, Mr. Christensen.
Okay.
Would you support measures to give federal public lands to the state or dispose of them to other entities?
I want to keep public lands public. I worked for 6 years as a public lands manager, managing 8 million acres of public lands, 13 million acres of mineral estate. I increased public access of those lands by 80,000 acres. Those lands are directly contributing to our national treasury. They are the 2nd largest contributor to the U.S. Treasury. It is wealth in the hands of the people. What we do need is more control over that land in Wyoming. I support updates to the Federal Land Policy Management Act, the Multiple Use and Sustained Yield Act, so that our governor will be able to be on par or above our agency officials that are in D.C. I want our decisions to be made local. I'm a strong public lands advocate. I do not believe that we should sell the land and put it in the hands of just the wealthy. It is wealth in the hands of you.
Mr. Dotson.
I generally agree with Kevin on this. We need to make sure that we maintain our public ownership of our public lands. Swapping to other entities, transferring to other entities, I would only support in the case of a land swap, wherein the public lands get the better deal.
Mr. Freeze.
I'm in agreement with my rivals that public land should stay in public hands and a multi-use policy should be pursued. And I also am in agreement that much more of the decision-making and control needs to be devolved out of D.C. and to the state.
Mr. Giroux.
I don't believe that there should be any wholesale land transfer or sell-off of public lands, especially not in the middle of the night and not to pay down our national deficit. What's important to me is promoting legislation like the bipartisan Fix Our Forests Act, which promotes grazing on usable land, which also reduces the wildfire burden that we are no doubt going to experience more heavily this summer. I support fully funding the Land and Water Conservation Fund to allow for full funding of our natural resources and to fully support the use of our public lands, which allow for responsible energy development, grazing, and of course our tourism industry to allow us to recreate, fish, hunt, and use those lands properly. I also support key legislation like the Make America Beautiful Act, which seeks to buy down the maintenance issues that we're experiencing on our national forests and our national parks. It's important that we steward and take care of these lands. That should be done with local voices at the beginning of the process and at the end.
Mr. Gray?
Public lands must remain in public hands. That's why I'm opposed to these land transfer schemes. I'm opposed to disposals, and I have a track record of defending public lands. As a member of the State Board of Land Commissioners, I was the one member to oppose the Columbus Peak Land Exchange from the start. That would have been very bad for access for the people of Wyoming. And we insisted on public comment when the governor didn't want to have public comment, and the fact that we got public comment on that issue was pivotal in turning the tide and getting 4 no votes on that Columbus Peak Land Exchange. It would have been very damaging for access. But we must manage our public lands for multiple use, for recreation, for oil and gas development, for coal, soda ash, ranching and farming, all of the core industries of our state. And that is also a key role of our next member of Congress, ensuring that public lands remain in public hands, but ensuring that they are also managed for multiple use.
Mr. Reisner?
Public lands stay in public hands, no sales, no transfers. I've come out with the Reisner Better Land Management Policy that will return $1 billion annually from those lands back to Wyoming. Currently, we generate $1.5 billion in revenue from those lands, and we get 48% of that. When we look at other states like Alaska, they're getting the lion's share of 90% split, so the precedent is already there to raise our split in Wyoming, and it takes an act of Congress and a congressman willing to do it, to 90%. So if you want to see property tax eliminations for seniors and veterans while still covering our essential services here in the state, we have to cover the gap, and $1 billion annually and growing as we expand our coal, uranium, oil, and gas explorations. We will be able to cover it with that $1 billion coming back from Washington, D.C. by raising the mineral royalty splits on those lands to 90%, allowing the federal government to keep 10% for management, and returning the BLM to Wyoming, building it in Cheyenne, providing high-paying jobs.
Mrs. Balo?
The wholesale transfer or sale of our public lands is a generational mistake that would decimate our state for the next generation and decimate our prosperity. I do not support the wholesale sale or exchange or transfer of public lands. I grew up in Gillette, where multiple use was very real. I've recreated my whole life, mostly in the Bighorns as a hunter and a fisherman, and I understand that when Wyoming voices are at the table, whether it's for industry, grazing, or recreation or conservation, that we come together with stewardship and access at the front of our conversations. Public lands should remain federal and state-owned, but Wyoming voices must be at the table and must be leading the conversation and the decision-making for the management of our species, of our lands, and of multiple use.
Mr. Beitman?
Okay, here we go in 60 seconds or less. I don't have a lot of bumper sticker slogans to throw at you. I have a very nuanced policy position on public lands, and I'm going to shoot it straight. I think that the public lands are a huge driver for Wyoming's economy. We need to open them up for multiple use, and they should not be locked up. Management does not mean locking it up and throwing away the key. That's neglect. We've been neglecting our national forests. As a volunteer firefighter, I've seen the devastating effects of wildfires in our national forest, and it's horrible. We've got to do better. We send billions of dollars of foreign aid overseas. It's stupid that we don't spend that money here in America for our national forests and our national parks. I want to spend that money and invest it here in America with American forests, and I want to make sure that states on the mineral side have a say, more of a say, and I think states should take over the leasing of federal minerals, and that decision should not be in Washington, D.C., because that destroys our economy in Wyoming when the pendulum swings back and forth every 48 years, depending on which administration is in power.
Thanks, all. Mr. Dotson, you're going to have the first crack at this next one.
The federal roadless rule protects about 3 million acres of public land in the Bighorn, Medicine Bow, and Bridger-Teton National Forests from road building, commercial logging, and potentially disruptive development. Wyoming Representative Harriet Hageman proposed a bill to nullify the roadless rule and permanently block any similar rule from being established. Do you support the U.S. Department of Agriculture's plan to do away with the roadless rule? Why or why not?
Mr. Dotson.
So my wife and I enjoy going out into the national forest and camping, doing dispersed camping just out in the wilderness. And you can't do that very well without roads. So I wouldn't go so far as to say that we should have roadless forests, but we also need to keep in mind that all of our public lands are under competing interests. And the challenge always has been and always will be balancing those competing interests. So there's got to be a middle road somewhere, pardon the pun, where we have enough roads to be able to do firefighting as necessary, to be able to get the resources from the National Forest. The Black Hills National Forest is one of the oldest and best managed forests in the system. And so we should continue to do that, and making sure that we don't cause more fires with hot cars out in the dry grass. That's the competition.
Mr. Freeze?
So each of these forest areas had their own roadless areas prior to the imposition of the blanket nationwide roadless rule that Clinton put in place. And it has led to mismanagement of the land in terms of fire. It's reduced access. As with every solution, it's best if it's done at a more localized level. So I fully support the removal of the nationwide roadless rule, and I believe each of these areas need to have their own specific management plan, many of which will result in large areas with no roads.
Mr. Giroux?
I do support the rescission of the Clinton-era roadless rule and returning a lot of those decisions back to the local areas, because they know best how to manage their lands and put rules in place that allow them to manage their lands more responsibly, whether that be through fire suppression, whether that be through grazing activities, whether that be through timber production. That should be local decisions that are made by people who are living in these communities. In Teton County, they feel this very acutely. Here in Natrona County, we have plenty of areas that have turned into tinder boxes simply because we wanted to leave these areas completely untouched, and the urban forest interface that we see right now puts a lot of homes in danger, and it creates an environment where fire insurance is difficult to come by. So we need to consider both and return this to local control. I'm certainly in favor of that.
Mr. Gray?
I support Congresswoman Hageman and her work to rescind the roadless rule. The roadless rule was a Clinton-driven, left-driven attempt to hurt our public lands, and it needs to be removed. You think about some of these agencies are almost like the Joker. It's almost like they want it to burn. The deadfall, the beetle kill. You drive by our closed sawmills, the lost potential there in terms of logging. Our public lands must remain in public hands. No sales, no disposals, no transfer schemes. We also, though, need multiple use, and removing the roadless rule is consistent with that, so we can properly manage these lands, and so we can log, which will lower the cost of housing, which is very important. I mean, many of these rules is an example of one of the rules that has increased the cost of living, the roadless rule, and it needs to be rescinded so that we can log, we can reach our full potential, and we can recreate.
Mr. Reisner?
I do support Representative Hageman and her work on this. I believe we just witnessed on a large scale Canada burning, and we saw what the disaster that was when we don't manage our forests responsibly. And in Wyoming, as I've traveled around all 23 counties several times, you can see all of the deadfall. We have to be able to get into these areas to manage these, to log these areas, and to continue to clean our forests so that Wyoming doesn't burn. And we see the beetle and the deadfall down in Centennial, Wyoming, in the mountains. This is a big issue for Wyoming, and we have to be able to log these areas and access these areas, but also for our recreating and multiple use to keep them open and accessible for all of Wyoming and all of Wyomingites.
Mrs. Balo?
The roadless rule and other federal legislation must never be a backdoor to shut off access to our public lands. I support replacing the current roadless rule or the obstructive roadless rule with something more like a framework for states to make more decisions about roadless rules. Because the answer is, it's hard to say always yes or never no to something like the roadless rule. It depends on the location. It depends on the use. But again, when Wyoming voices are at the table making the decisions, we put stewardship, conservation, management of our wildlife and our forests at the forefront, and also the uses like agriculture and timber. We don't want forests with so many roads that we can't forest or use it for other things. We also don't want too few roads that we can't access it for recreation.
Mr. Beitman?
I agree. I would get rid of the roadless rule for a multitude of reasons, but Congress needs to set the policy. The policy is multiple use and active management, not neglect. We've seen neglect for decades, and we're paying the price every summer when we're choking on smoke. Firefighters are dying, and our neighbors' homes are burning up from out-of-control wildfires. It's a disaster. We have to invest money. I'm conservative, but I'm not cheap. And in order to get our forests back to the way they need to be, we're going to have to invest money in our national forests. I'm sorry to say it, but it's true. It's been 2 decades or more of this neglect. We have to rescind the roadless rule. We have to get serious about multiple use. We got to get serious about active fire management and active forest management. And we'll be proud of our forests again. They'll look good. We'll have no more wildfires, and it's a win-win. And it's a win-win for hunters and anglers to be able to get to their hunting spots, campers to be able to enjoy the mountain and get to the places they want to get to, and for our seniors that have limited mobility to get to their favorite spots as well.
Mr. Christensen?
Modify but do not rescind the roadless rule. And I'll tell you why. Wyoming people love to go into these areas. That's where I go to hunt. Out-of-state people love to go on their roads, and they like to pull up right next to where they're going to hunt. Wyoming people love these areas, and that's why I think we should keep them. A third of all the hazardous fuel reduction work in the Forest Service is done in a designated roadless area. What do we need to change? We need to make it easier for the firefighters and for our hazardous fuel reduction work in those areas, give more flexibility to be able to get rid of that deadfall. It's more about leadership. Some of our national forests are very well managed. Bridger Teton, Black Hills, Medbo Route is terrible. That's why we had the Mullen fire there. So we would need to keep that. The other thing is Congress has no role in this, really, because they've already given the authority to the Department of Agriculture to do this through the Administrative Procedures Act. Congress ought to focus on things that only Congress can do.
Thank you. Mr. Fries, you're going to be up first for this next one.
Congress holds the nation's purse strings, but it's often unable to agree on a budget in a timely manner. In your view, is it appropriate to use a government shutdown as a negotiating tactic for budget or policy priorities? If so, under what circumstances?
Well, it is a fact that Congress has not really done its job since, I believe, 1997. The proper procedure of fulfilling the budgetary requirements have not been done since then. Instead, it's all these stopgap measures and bills all rolled together as one, so that we don't have the kind of transparency into our bill making, which we enjoy in Wyoming, where there's one bill, one subject. Instead, everything's lumped together. I've very mixed views on the use of the shutdown. I've never thought it was that productive in the past. I would hope that more intentional and thoughtful leadership in the House and Senate ought to lead to solutions that prevent shutdowns from happening.
Mr. Giroux?
The direct answer on this is no. The American taxpayer should never be used as leverage to negotiate and play the games that exist in Washington, D.C. That should never be the case, and we should never be expected to foot the bill there either. If these government shutdowns do take place, and as an Army officer, I've gone through 2 different shutdowns. Members of Congress still received their pay, while members of the military, members of the federal government didn't know whether their next paycheck was coming, and they had to stretch. That's not right. It's not right to the people who've committed to serve their country. And at the end of the day, Congress's sole obligation is to ensure that they are managing the purse strings and our taxpayer dollars adequately and responsibly. I'm in favor of general order, which includes 12 separate appropriations bills that each individual taxpayer can see what their member of Congress is voting on, and then they have to come back to their constituency and defend why or why not they're supporting that particular provision. Pretty direct for me to know.
Mr. Gray?
Well, the monetary expansion in the United States, which has been fueled by debt and deficits, is one of the core causes of the inflation that ran rampant in 2021 and 2022, and we're still trying to reverse. So it is very important that the spending issues in this country be brought to the forefront again. And as a member of Congress, I am going to be doing that. I'm going to be bringing the out-of-control spending back to the forefront. When you think back to the 2 times in my lifetime that we've gotten reductions in expenditures in 1994 and 2020 and 2010, it was a few members of Congress who brought these spending controls to the forefront. Now, Congress, if there's a shutdown, they should not be paid, period, because the use of leverage in this manner is inappropriate and it's a lapse in leadership. But we need to bring to the forefront again the out-of-control federal spending. But no budget, no pay. That's the bottom line in terms of how Congress should handle this issue.
Mr. Reisner?
I am not in favor of shutting down the government. I think we see what a disaster the Democrats have caused for the shutdowns, and they're talking about another one, and then we see it held up with members of the Freedom Caucus. And it's just not right to our troops in America to shut down business because of 1% of a bill. So we move things forward, we communicate with each other, and we do the right thing for America to move this country forward. I would say we need to add an amendment to the Constitution, a balanced budget amendment, just like we have here in Wyoming. No balanced budget, no pay for any member of Congress, and it needs to be in the Constitution. They either balance the budget or they don't get paid.
Mrs. Balow?
Several months ago, I sent out a media release to this effect, that no member of Congress should be paid in case of a partial or full government shutdown. I still support that. However, I would extend that to congressional staff as well, because many of our congressmen and women do not need a salary, and so it does not hit them. It will hit them if their staff also is not going to be paid. That's one of the first things that I'll work on as your congresswoman. I'm the mother of an Army veteran and the mother-in-law of an Air Force veteran. They both have federal jobs now and have been deeply, deeply impacted as a family by government shutdowns. I also serve on the board of the Wyoming Children's Society, where birth mothers and both current and former, as well as adopted families, were deeply impacted by government shutdowns, and Wyoming Children's Society took on a new role of helping some of those young mothers and families out. I don't want to see that happen as a result of political games.
Mr. Beitman?
No, and I'll use the other 59 seconds to talk about why we need a constitutional amendment on a single subject like Wyoming has. That's why you have the brinksmanship that you see every time there's a must-pass bill. They throw everything in the kitchen sink into that bill, and it's just absolute chaos, and it's not a good way to run a government. Hopefully we're seeing the bottom of the barrel here with politics in Washington, D.C. It's time for new leadership. This is failure on leadership. It's a generation of failed leadership. We need term limits as well. Is Congress going to term limit themselves? No, they're not. Is Congress going to propose a single subject amendment? Probably not. Is Congress going to propose a balanced budget amendment? Probably not. That's why I support the state legislatures to do a convention of states under Article 5. The other way you can amend the Constitution, that's the only way it's going to get done. We have to do it in order to save this country.
Mr. Christensen?
Folks, brinksmanship is not leadership. When we send people to Congress who come back and tell us that the other side is the problem and that there's no point in even trying to work with them. I remember when Reagan and Tip O'Neill, Speaker of the House, would sit down and have lunch. And they would make compromise. They would show genuine leadership to our country, and then all the bills start moving out. They would make deals and they would make compromise because they put America first. Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan couldn't have been any two different people. And they showed us how people who put America first can come together and put what we have to have in Congress and get it done and get it out the door. No more continuing resolutions. No more having Congress getting paid, no more going on recess. I'll stand in the doorway. You put me in Congress, I will stand in the doorway, and they're going to have to walk over me if we go on recess while we don't have our work done.
Mr. Dodson?
The government shutdown is the congressional version of a toddler having a temper tantrum, and we're better than that. We need to stop. It's also an admission that they don't know what they're doing, don't know how to get it done, to try to get to a point where we've got even just a budget, let alone a balanced budget. Now, what do we do about that? I don't know. Find some more bridge builders, I guess. It is true that we do need to get a handle on our spending. We do need to find a way to get a balanced budget again like we used to have back in the day. It is not true that government spending has anything to do with inflation. In the 70s, we had the biggest inflation ever, double-digit inflation, and our spending at that time is a pittance in compared to what we have now. There's no correlation, doesn't make any sense.
Thank you, candidates. Mr. Giroux, we'll begin with you next. Maggie?
Do you think Congress is currently fulfilling its role as a check on executive power? If not, how would you improve that?
Mr. Giroux.
Thank you. I think this is actually one of the most important questions and one of the things that most ails our country. When we talk about political division and when we talk about the efficiency of Congress, we should be able to look at the institution of Congress and know that there are people there who are occupying places of power because they represent us and that they're taking issues seriously, not only for our current state, but for generations to come. As someone with a son on the way, this is constantly on my mind. Congress should be a place that we look to have great debates, to solve serious issues, and to look out for the freedoms and opportunities that have allowed for us to be successful for the past 250 years, and for us to look fondly upon the next 250 years. So no, I think that Congress has abdicated much of its responsibility to unelected bureaucrats who are unknown to us, who are unelected, who are unaccountable, and I think ultimately that power must reside with the United States Congress. I think that would solve a lot of the problems that we are facing in our political climate today, and if those hard debates are fought out rhetorically in the United States Congress, we'd experience a much better body politic here in the United States of America.
Mr. Gray?
One of the things that Congresswoman Hageman and President Trump have been doing great work on is implementing the 2023 decision by the United States Supreme Court, reversing Chevron deference and reversing for 50 years all of the regulations that the bureaucracy put into place, increasing costs, regulations that were inconsistent with federal law. And I want to continue that work because clawing back these illegal regulations is really hard work. And it requires somebody that is dogged and that is focused. And I'm going to continue that great work of Congresswoman Hageman and President Trump of reversing these regulations that have increased costs for over 50 years, that now we have a window. This is a ticking time clock. The last 2 years of this very important Trump administration in reversing these regulations that were layered on from the early 70s to 2023 that now we need to reverse.
Mr. Reisner?
So we have executive order after executive order, and we need a Congress that is willing to go in and codify President Trump's executive orders for the American people so that the next administration doesn't just write those executive orders out. And that's truly what we needed to work on, is a legislator that will legislate again. We have a checks and balance system for a reason in 3 branches of government that have allowed executive orders to just go unchecked. We need a system that will allow the Congress to pass legislation again, and that's what they need to do, and that's what they need to work on, is passing President Trump's executive orders into law so that they can't be erased if we want to keep these executive orders moving forward.
Mrs. Balo?
For decades, Congress has been ceding authority not only to the White House and the administration at the time, but also to bureaucrats who interpret law differently than it was written or different than the spirit of the law. That keeps changing. Our Congress of late has also just adhered to whatever the du jour executive orders say, and then in the next administration hope that they get turned over. That can't be the case anymore. Congress must take back the authority over the decisions which it is entitled to make and expected to make. The American people expect that. The people of Wyoming expect that. I am not going to Washington, D.C. to work for a president or an administration or bureaucrats. I'm going to work for the people of Wyoming.
Mr. Beitman?
Can you repeat the question? I feel like the telephone game. We're kind of drifting off of the original question here.
Do you think Congress is currently fulfilling its role as a check on executive power? If not, how would you improve that?
They're not. They're not doing anything, actually. Article 1 of the Constitution is very clear. I mean, they put Congress first in the Constitution for a reason. The power of the people, through their elected representatives and senators, shall make the laws. And they should also hold the other two branches in check. The other two branches should not be as powerful as they are. They have way outlived or Congress has abdicated their responsibility, of course. There have been no arrests on these political corruption cases. None. Congress shows up once a week, fires off a strongly worded letter, and then flies home and goes and fundraises for the next election. Congress is broken, ladies and gentlemen. It is broken. We need to elect people to office with character, and they're going to work. I'm a hard worker. I'm a workhorse, not a show horse. I'm not going to Congress to be famous, to get on Fox News, or to shoot out press releases every day. You probably won't hear much from me because I'll be doing the actual work. Thank you.
Mr. Christensen?
We have no further to look than the current conflict in Iran. Under the War Powers Act, right now, our armed forces are engaged in combat operations without the authority of Congress. Congress, under the War Powers Act, gives the president full authority in the first 60 days to do what he needs to do for our national security, and I fully support that. After that, since the days of Vietnam, we have a responsibility in Congress to ask the tough questions on behalf of every one of you. We have today a strategy that is untenable, unclear, and unwinnable in Iran without an exit strategy. Members of Congress have the responsibility to ask those tough questions. In Congress, I will be asking those tough questions, and I'll have a personal conversation with Pete Hegseth on the first week. This is an example where we have to assert our authority in Congress and follow the law.
Mr. Dodson?
So the question was, is Congress an effective check? And no, it's not. If I were an orthopedic surgeon, I would very much be in the business of spine transplants because Congress has not found any way to find their spines, and they need a lot of help with that. On 4 separate occasions in my life, I have sworn to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, as have several of my competitors here. We need to find our spines and defend the Constitution.
Mr. Freeze?
Congress does need to do more. And let's keep in mind what an executive order actually is. It is the president instructing his agencies in how to go about fulfilling their responsibilities under law. The first executive order that broke this rule was President Obama's DACA order, which created law out of thin air. It's interesting because back in 2011, when we were drafting executive orders, which President Trump used 20 of them in his first term, I was asking around the table, what can't we just move to have these converted into law so they're locked down and they don't flip-flop? And it was the first time people really were talking about codifying executive orders, and there'd been no precedent until a year later. Congress has a more important role to play. It is important to lock down many of the advances President Trump has made so they aren't reversed by the next liberal administration. Thank you.
Mr. Gray, you're up next.
Yes.
The Social Security Retirement Trust Fund is projected to be depleted in late 2032 if Congress does not intervene. Should this program be salvaged, replaced, or allowed to sunset? Please explain your answer.
We must protect Social Security. It is a promise. And the raids from the Congress that have been occurring for decades on the Social Security account are immoral, dishonest, and they have to be stopped. And this goes back to my earlier answer about controlling federal expenditure. The out-of-control federal expenditure is one of the drivers of the illegal, wrong raids of the Social Security account, and it has to stop. And that's why I've emphasized controlling federal expenditure, stopping the raids on the Social Security account, and protecting Social Security, because it is a promise to the citizens of the United States, and I'm going to make sure that we do that as Wyoming's next member of Congress.
Mr. Reisner?
We have to protect Social Security 100%. We've all paid into it, and we're expecting it. It should never be a budgetary line item that's up for debate. The One Big Beautiful Bill did something amazing, because we have less workers that is hurting our Social Security system, and we needed more workers in the system. So we have a lot of people on Medicaid who are now required, they're able-bodied workers that can come out and begin working, so they have a minimum requirement of work of 20 hours a week. And that gave us millions more people in the workforce, giving back to Social Security, giving back to those benefits, and it gives us those workers back. But next we're going to be faced with AI and what happens. So there has to be some sort of Social Security tax on AI if they're going to be taking over jobs. So we need to think and elect someone that's willing to work for the people to make sure that Social Security is protected, not only for ourselves, but for future generations, and make sure that this is all tied back so that it's protected for all of you.
Mrs. Balo?
Could you repeat the question, please?
The Social Security Retirement Trust Fund is projected to be depleted in late 2032 if Congress does not intervene. Should the program be salvaged, replaced, or allowed to sunset?
Most importantly, we need to curb federal government spending and stop spending money that we don't have. For every dollar that we spend that we don't have as a federal government, that takes away from programs like Social Security. I do not support decreasing or eliminating benefits or making many changes at all to Social Security. That would be dependent on what constituents and experts right here in Wyoming say. However, my conversations so far have said, don't mess with the solvency, don't mess with the rules, make sure that we curb spending around Social Security. I also think that there are some opportunities to curb fraud, abuse, and waste in Social Security and other areas as well, to ensure that the people who deserve Social Security and who earn Social Security are actually receiving it.
Mr. Beitman?
It should be salvaged. In order to do so, there's a few options. Number one, DOGE did uncover billions, with a B, of waste, fraud, and abuse just in the Social Security system alone. You can't go to the American people, the American taxpayer, and ask them to sacrifice more in a system that is ripe with fraud and abuse. And it needs to be cleaned up, and that's the first step. Also, we have an arbitrary income cap on the taxation of Social Security. If you want to make that thing solvent again, unfortunately, you're going to have to remove the cap. We've kicked the can down the road for so many decades that we're going to have to take more austerity type of measures that are going to be a little bit more painful than if we would have done this in 1996 when I gave a speech in my high school class about how to save Social Security. There wasn't the political will to do it. My generation has the political will to do it. Also, we need to allow seniors that are on Social Security to continue to work if they so choose and not penalize them for it. There are ways to do it. There are solutions to do it. I have solutions. Thank you.
Mr. Christensen?
Since 1932, Social Security is a contract, not an entitlement. That's the most important thing to understand. There are two trust funds in Social Security, and we're really talking about the OASI Trust Fund. The Disability Insurance Trust Fund is probably solvent through 2075. The key thing that we have to look at here with Social Security is, again, removing the cap, certainly, but what we also have to do is fix the Treasury borrowing. When the Treasury borrows it, they are not required to pay it back with interest that is indexed to inflation. If you take big current dollars out and you pay with cheap dollars, we keep making that trust fund a little bit smaller. The way we fix that is we require by law that when the Treasury takes money out, and they are allowed to do this by law, that they have to pay it back with indexed inflation. Those things will help us fix it. We have people today that are making decisions with the belief that that trust fund is going to be insolvent. We're going to make it solvent. It's not an entitlement. It is a contract.
Mr. Dotson.
So, let's be clear. Social Security is not in trouble because we're spending too much money on SNAP or anything else. We're in trouble because we're not taking in enough money to cover all the benefits that we have promised people. And it's really easy, as Mr. Beitman and Mr. Christensen have already pointed out, if you remove the cap, which is currently about $184,000, please fact check me on that if I'm mistaken. Elon Musk just signed a contract for $1 trillion in compensation, and almost $1 trillion of that is not subject to any Social Security taxes. Just 5% on $1 trillion is $50 billion. We can do Social Security easily.
Mr. Freeze?
Yes, Social Security benefits have to be protected for every person receiving them now and who's close to receiving them as well. There may be some changes for people entering the workforce. I know that the actuaries have looked at, extending a year before they start receiving benefits and things like that. Raising the cap is another one, and also finding fraud. These are all methods to go towards it. I also personally believe that multimillionaires should not be receiving Social Security checks, but they just automatically fly out the door. I'd like to see that stop too.
And Mr. Gerald.
We have a moral obligation to take care of those who've been guaranteed to be taken care of through Social Security, those who are retiring or approaching retirement age. The other thing that needs to be said is there's a demographic issue and an issue of rating the Social Security Trust Fund. Ultimately, we have to understand, and millennials, my generation, have been lied to by politicians for years, and it's infuriating. It is a math problem and it is a demographic issue that our country is facing, where there do need to be reforms made for those entering the workforce, and we need to be realistic with what those benefits look like, if they need to be changed, if those programs need to be altered. One of the most important things to that is ensuring that fraud, waste, and abuse isn't taking place, that we are curbing spending in the national debt. And additionally, we have to ensure that the people using it are using it appropriately and that funds are not being wasted on folks who are fraudulently receiving those benefits.
Thank you, candidates. We're in the home stretch here, folks, with one final question. We're going to begin with Mr. Reisner. Maggie?
Carbon-based energy industries have supported Wyoming for generations. What are your views about the balance between supporting those essential industries, including coal, natural gas, and oil, and making room for diversification in other energy sectors like wind, solar, and nuclear?
Mr. Reisner.
So our coal industry and our uranium industries are the #1 producer in this nation. Wyoming produces the most out of anyone. In our oil and our gas industries, we rank 8th. We are massive producers. I am not a fan of subsidized wind turbines. 6,000 acres in Natrona County, Converse County, and Carbon County on March 1st, 2023 were voted for 60-year wind leases. Again in 2024, those were renewed, and again in 2024, 3 times the State Land Board renewed those leases. 60 years. I will be dead before those leases are gone, and we'll have replaced those turbines several times over because they don't last. We need to expand our coal, our oil, our gas. We need to have uranium mining and expand that, and we need to look towards other uranium enrichment possibilities and other ways to create more income in Wyoming.
Mrs. Balo?
I grew up in Gillette, where my family's livelihood was dependent on the boom and bust of mostly oil and gas, but also coal as I got older. It's important that we maintain our core industries, our legacy industries, as you wish, and also expand those. We have an opportunity to find and discover new revenue streams for our legacy industries, and it's really exciting. We have an opportunity to innovate in all of those legacy industries and also to make sure that every community across the state benefits. Second, nuclear energy. We've been safely mining uranium for decades in Wyoming. I know because I've been to those sites throughout my life, throughout my leadership. And we have other groups that are bringing in new nuclear processes, advanced technology. We need to grow that and feel a nuclear renaissance. Other renewable energy has a place, but it should not be subsidized, and wind should largely be on private land.
Mr. Beitman?
Yeah, solar panels belong on rooftops and over large parking lots, not on a massive industrial scale on our farmland and public lands. Windmills are an environmental disaster, and they're terrible for the grid, and they have really destroyed our reliability in this country and have caused our electricity rates to go up and cause rolling blackouts. Now our grid is at the point of failure. Our electric generation capacity is tapped out. We need uranium mining. We need our nuclear industry to get going full bore. We need to get our coal industry going back full bore again, and natural gas. That's what heats our homes and cools our homes. That's what keeps us alive. That's what keeps our products moving and our economy humming, not renewables. There's a place for them, but not on an industrial scale. Like I said, we want to be able to flip the switch and have the lights come on. Renewable energy is not the answer. We need to go back to the basics. Americans want affordable, reliable energy.
Mr. Christensen?
Wind and solar in Wyoming has no place on public lands. Go drive down the Medicine Bow area and see what happened across our public lands, and that's a disgrace for Wyoming. When you look at wind and solar, they have significant environmental impacts. Don't let anybody tell you that that's all green. I've read those impact statements. They have significant environmental impact. We would not be needing the Seminole Pump Storage Project if it wasn't for the fact that the wind and solar have periods of time where they don't produce anything. So it's important that we support our coal and our oil and gas industries. I permitted over 5,000 new oil and gas wells, and we mined 1.7 billion tons. Why? Because it powers our country. It's not just Wyoming. There are 6 Midwest states that get the entirety of their power off of Wyoming coal. We have a future for that, and we're going to get it to foreign markets too. And the key there is that those new technologies like nuclear have a place in Wyoming if done right and with lots of public comment.
Mr. Dodson?
So south of my home in Sundance, just a little bit north of Newcastle, is the town of Cambria, Wyoming. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I have to correct myself. There is no such town as Cambria, Wyoming, because it died 98 years ago when the mine played out. Mines play out. We're going to take the last piece of coal out of the ground, and if we just go willy-nilly taking as much out as we can right now, that day is just coming sooner. Now, it's not going to be tomorrow. It may not even be in 100 years. But the day is coming, and then what are we going to do? Well, as my wife is fond of saying, the wind always blows in Wyoming. The sun will continue to burn for billions of years. We can continue to be the backbone of American energy independence if we start planning. And planning now is the best time to do that. Or actually, the best time to do that was 20 years ago. But the second best time is today.
Mr. Freeze?
The sun does not always shine and the wind does not always blow. We need steady, reliable, consistent power. Someday in the future, we may have battery technology that stores enough energy and then can release it quick enough that wind and solar might be a probable alternative. But currently, most of these, vast majority of these projects, all rely on subsidies and tax gimmicks, which don't do us any good in the long run at all. Our opportunity with our natural resources here, and especially including uranium, could extend to some really important advantages. We're about to enter the time of this important renegotiation that's been pushed out already for the water compact. If we can mine enough uranium and approvals can get done quick enough, A lot of those southern states, they've got the big old ocean. They can desalinate if they've got enough cheap power, and uranium and nuclear power can provide that for them.
Mr. Girold.
Coal, oil, and natural gas help provide for the schools and the roads that allowed me to grow up here in Casper, Wyoming. I think we should fully support those industries. I also believe in using and implementing everything that works and letting the free market determine what is best for an energy mix, because it's different from Goshen County to Lincoln County, from Sheridan to all the way down to Albany County. It's important to let the free market decide. I'm against federal subsidies for wind and solar. I also look towards the new nuclear renaissance, which we're currently in, and fully support this being an energy state and us being the leader on small modular reactors and understanding and harnessing what is safe, affordable, and dispatchable energy. As we talk about the national deficit, we cannot simply save our way out of it, we have to grow our way out of it. And Wyoming plays a critical and leading role in that endeavor. So I fully support that, and that mix should then be determined by, of course, the free market.
Mr. Gray.
Well, in 26 days, in this very important choice that the people of Wyoming are going to make, there's really two options that are out there. One, are we going to continue to grow and diversify around our Wyoming-based industries, or are we going to go down this nightmarish path that the media, Gordon, other insiders have been pushing of these woke wind turbines, the woke data centers? I have a track record of fighting these wind turbines. When they tried to plop down a Spanish wind company in Converse and Niobrara counties, I was the only no vote on the state land board. And I worked for 9 months to get that rescission motion passed so that that project would be reversed. And that's when Gordon had his outburst saying he wanted to fight me or whatever. But I kept focused on the issue. And that's one of the big reasons why I'm running for Congress. We have to end all of these wind subsidies. And I'm the only person on the stage who has come out opposed to these AI surveillance data centers they're trying to plop down in Wyoming. And that's why the AI industry now is trying to spend money opposing our campaign, because I defend our core coal, oil, and gas, soda ash, ranching, and farming industries that have built Wyoming.
Thank you,
and
Mr.
must
Gray.
continue to.
We've come to the time for closing remarks. You'll each have 1 minute, and we'll begin with Ms. Balo.
Well, thank you again for hosting this event, and thank you to the people of Wyoming for tuning in or being here in person to learn more about your candidates for U.S. Congress. Once again, I was your twice elected state superintendent of public instruction, where I had the opportunity to work on a new elementary and secondary education act called ESSA. Had an opportunity to work with Mike Enzi on Perkins or workforce readiness legislation, and I also served as the president and treasurer of the National Association of State Superintendents. At the state level, I focused on transparency, empowering families, literacy, accountability in excellent schools, as well as preparing students for the future. I led Wyoming through COVID better than any other state did. Also serving on SLIB and State Board of Land Commissioners, I had the opportunity to work with communities. I would be honored to earn your vote on August 18th. My tagline is roots to represent and experience to lead, and I'm ready to do that now. Thank you.
Mr. Beitman.
Thank you. Thank you all for sitting through this long night. As you can see, there's a lot of issues facing this great country. This country's in trouble, but I do think our best days are yet to come. We have a Congress that's broken. We have a generational shift about to happen from the baby boomers down to my generation and my kids' generation. How we want this country to look in 20 years. The types of people we're going to send to Washington, D.C. to fix this problem. You got to send people that can fix problems with proven leadership and a record of success. And that's what I bring to this race. Not only in the public sector as Senate President and 10 years in the state legislature, but also as a businessman and as a landman and a dad and a husband, somebody with skin in the game. And I strongly urge you to take a good hard look at me, take a look at my record, who I am as a person and what I've done and what I will do for this state. God bless you all and thank you very much.
Mr. Christensen.
I'm Kevin Christensen, and I'm running to represent you. I'm your Casper, Wyoming native, person who grew up here and cares about the people of Wyoming. You got an important choice to make, and you have a decision of what direction our country is going to go. If you are happy with what you have seen out of Congress, then you can choose career politicians, multimillionaires and billionaires, and you will get exactly the same thing out of Congress. If you want to see change, pick people with character, values, and proven leadership. I have led in combat, I have led in federal government, I have led in private industry, and those things are what matters when we have in Congress. Candidates can tell you a lot of things about what they stand for, but what you really find out is that the character and the values and that leadership is what they will actually do when you're in Congress. I'm part of a group that's called Rational Republicans. I'm proud to have that tag. I'm a Republican for all Wyoming. Kevin Christensen, thank you.
Mr. Dodson.
So first of all, I want to thank the Wyoming League of Women Voters, WyoFile, and Wyoming Public Media for moderating and hosting, and also the expertise of the staff of Casper College and all these lovely microphones and everything. Thank you. Appreciate it. I've done my own tech work in the day, and it's not as easy as it seems to be. When it doesn't show up, that's when you know it's working right. I do have a track record. I've spent 30 years helping people solve their problems, beginning in tech support, where I learned the troubleshooting process, where you start by studying the problem, making sure you ask good questions, make sure you've not missed or made assumptions about the problem so you go running off on a wrong track. Then you start thinking about causes. How did we get here? What are the points of failure? What is it that makes this thing happen the way it happens? Once you have that together, then you start thinking about solutions. You don't make up problems to go with a solution that you like.
Thank you, Mr. Dodson. Mr. Freeze?
15 weeks ago, I decided to make a shift in my life and step out of the background of being involved in the conservative movement. Charlie Kirk's assassination had a lot to do with it, as did my dad's passing. Over these weeks, I have greatly enjoyed getting to know all the folks up here at the table. I deeply respect and admire their accomplishments legislatively and in public service, and most particularly those who have served in the military and put their lives on the line for our freedoms. That said, with 3 weeks left to go, there's one person missing from the table, and I believe that's because he's been looking at the same polling that I've seen, which really shows that this is now a two-man race. The polling shows it quite clearly. And as I was pondering getting into this race, an old rancher said to me, you know, you've got to have a hill to die on, but a career politician tends to run on top of molehills and start throwing hand grenades. We need someone with a businessman's point of view who will solve problems in Washington and not a career politician. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Freeze. Mr. Garreau.
Thank you all for coming out and listening to this candidate forum. It shows the importance of this election and that your vote matters on August 18th. As the only person on this stage who has both combat leadership experience, leading Army Rangers in combat, and direct federal legislative experience, I'm privileged to be in this race, and I think what matters the most to Wyoming voters as I go around and talk to them is answering the single question: how can you, as one single member of Congress, accomplish anything on behalf of the state of Wyoming? The answer to that is simple. It's working with other people in order to accomplish the priorities of Wyoming and seeing to it that they are willing to work with you in achieving those things. I'm very proud to have worked in the United States Congress for the past 4.5 years. It was a privilege of mine, but all of that speaks to experience and delivering results on behalf of the Cowboy State, the state that raised me, gave me every freedom and opportunity, and I look forward to the opportunity of serving this great state and this nation once again. Thank you.
Mr. Gray?
Well, I have a true track record of defending the will of the people of Wyoming. I don't back down to the insiders, the power group. I don't back down to the media like WyoFile and their donors out of Jackson. I continue to stand for you, the people of Wyoming. That's why you know my cell number, 307-251-1372. We need a member of Congress who is going to defend our core industries, all of which have been under attack for decades. Stop illegal immigration. Protect Social Security. That was such an important question. Social Security is a promise, and it needs to be protected and maintained. And we need a member of Congress that is going to defend our state, get election integrity done. We cannot allow Jackson to buy this election. Don't allow Jackson to take over our state. We need to unite and unite around our principles. If there's anything I can do, you can call me anytime. We're going to continue these town halls as we travel the state because I work for you, the people of Wyoming.
Mr. Reisner.
Well, thank you all for coming. I appreciate this opportunity. And I'll tell you what, Cheyenne and Washington, D.C. are full of politicians with a proven track record. And I think President Reagan said it best, status quo in Latin just means look at the mess we're in. And I'll tell you what, we're in a mess. A proven track record in Cheyenne or D.C. means nothing. I have a proven track record in Wyoming in business of signing both sides of the checks, of employing people in Wyoming, making sure that they can afford a home, raise a family, and carry on our legacy and our heritage. I'm self-made. I've done this on my own, and I stand here to give back to Wyoming, the state that raised me and the state that gave me everything and gave me my American dream so that I can fight for your American dream. My name is Reed Reisner, and I hope I can earn your vote on August 18th. Early voting has already started if you'd like to go early. Thank you all for coming. God bless you, God bless Wyoming, and God bless America.
Thank you, candidates. Dee Buckstaff from the League of Women Voters is going to close us out. But before she does, I'd like to thank each of you for standing for questions and sharing your perspectives with Wyoming voters.
This concludes our primary election forums, and along with our partners, WyoFile and Wyoming Public Media, we've enjoyed hosting these 5 candidate forums. Alongside the audience, we've learned a great deal about our government, elected positions, challenges facing Wyoming, and potential solutions. Of course, hearing about the candidates has been central to our learning. Remember that the forums are all recorded and available on the Wyoming League of Women Voters, Vote 411, Wyoming Public Media, and WyoFile websites. Please share the links. Voters, please check out vote411.org. It's an online voter education information system where you can view your ballot and federal, state, and local candidate information. The primary election is Tuesday, August 18th. Call your local county clerk's office to confirm that you are registered to vote. If you did not vote in the general election in 2024, you have been purged from the voting rolls and will need to re-register. After the 2024 election, 86,000 Wyoming voters were purged from the rolls. Call your clerk's office to confirm the proper identification and proof of residency documentation necessary to register or re-register. Early voting began on July 21st at Wyoming's local election offices. Thank you for joining the League of Women Voters of Wyoming, Wyoming Public Media, and WyoFile. We look forward to seeing you again during the general election season. Thank you and good evening.